Hello and welcome to this week's Real Estate Report on the Finance News Network. I'm Emma Pearson. This week we continue our series looking at capital city suburbs with the longest hold periods, focusing on two suburbs in Melbourne. In the second instalment of our interview with Mortgage Choice CEO Michael Russell, Michael shares his thoughts on how to tackle the issue of housing undersupply and affordability in Australia. And in our tax tip of the week, we look at the tax treatment of transferring real estate to family or friends. But first, let's catch up on this week's property news with Bianca Harchi.
In property news, stable interest rates and slowing house price growth appears to have lured home buyers back into the market. The number of home loans approved by banks and other lenders rose slightly in July, but still remain close to their lowest level for almost a decade. The Australian Bureau of Statistics reports that there were 46,974 loans to owner-occupiers in July. That's up 1.7%, seasonally adjusted, while the number of loans approved in June was 46,717, the lowest since March 2001. The value of loans to investors fell 2.3%, but the total value of loans to both investors and home buyers rose by 0.7%.
In our Suburb in Focus, we continue a series looking at suburbs with the longest hold periods in capital cities around Australia. This week, we look at two suburbs in Melbourne. First, let's look at the housing market in Ivanhoe East, located around 12.5 kilometres northeast of Melbourne CBD. According to figures from RP data, properties in Ivanhoe East are held for almost double the amount of time than the average hold period in Melbourne, with properties held for 16 years. Melbourne's average hold period for houses is 9.6 years. Ivanhoe East also has the longest hold period of any suburb in Australia. The suburb's population in the 2006 census was 3,784. Ivanhoe East is a leafy suburb surrounded by parklands along the Yarra River. Despite being a small suburb, Ivanhoe East has two primary schools, a church and a strip of shops including a bank, bakery, fruit store, butcher and supermarket. Turning to the figures now, and the median house price in Ivanhoe East in the year to May 2010 was $1.25 million. RP data says from May 1994 to May 2010, prices in Ivanhoe East rose from $250,000 to $1.25 million. The average hold period for a house in the suburb is 16 years. 25 properties were sold in Ivanhoe East for the 12-month period. Our next suburb is the house market in Essendon West, located over 17 kilometres northwest of Melbourne's CBD. RP data figures reveal that properties in Essendon West are held on average close to 15.5 years before being sold. With a population of 1,363, Essendon West is bounded on the west by Steel Creek and in the south by Maribyrnong River. The suburb has a mix of residential housing from interwar Californian bungalows to post-war dwellings to more modern homes. Essendon West is catered for by tram, train and bus that connect the suburb to the city. Taking a look at the figures, and the median house price in Essendon West for the year to May 2010 was $745,000. The average hold period for a property in the suburb was 15.4 years, with 21 properties sold in the 12-month period. In the second instalment of our interview with Mortgage Choice CEO Michael Russell, Michael shares his suggestions on how to tackle the problem of housing undersupply and affordability in Australia, including changes to make the First Home Saver account more attractive and indexing the First Homeowner Grant to median housing price growth.
I think there needs to be something done to help them, one with this First Home Saver account and two with the grant that just seems manifestly unfair that it hasn't been indexed. It just makes absolutely no sense to bring a grant of $7,000 in 2000 when the median house price was $220,000 and not index it each year. The median house price now is about $518,000. The March quarter of this year, the median house price was $518,000. So if you apply the percentage pro rata increase, the grant should now be around $16,500. Look, I think personally it's a terrific initiative that the government have embarked on, with putting something in place where they will co-contribute 17% per annum up to a contribution threshold of $5,500 a year. They have already indexed, so they indexed this threshold and they indexed the maximum account balance to CPI. So the threshold moved from $5,000 to $5,500 in July, and the account balance $75 to $80. They contribute 17%, which is tax-free for the for the first home buyer. So it's a terrific initiative. There are two reasons why it's basically been a failure. One is the requirement that the first homeowners must keep the account for 4 years. So if they want to, if they have a need to break the account within the 4 years, the money is automatically dumped into their superannuation, which really doesn't assist them at all. And the second thing is that if they do find a house and they find they can qualify for a loan within the 4 years, they can't use that money towards the house purchase. The second thing is really an awareness issue. A lot of first homeowners are just not aware that the account exists and the 17% tax-free contribution exists. So I think there needs to be a lot more work done, not only by the government but by the banks as well, in promoting this product to first homeowners.
And now to the tax tip of the week from Depreciator, the tax depreciation schedule specialists. This week, we take a look at the tax treatment of transferring real estate to family or friends. If you have sold or given away any real estate to your family or friends, you may need to find out the market value of your real estate or property for capital gains tax purposes. This includes houses, units, apartments, flats, holiday houses, vacant blocks of land, rental properties, and hobby farms. Selling or gifting property is a capital gains tax event. For most CGT events, your capital gain or loss is the difference between your capital proceeds and the cost base. However, if you receive nothing for your property, for example, if you give it away as a gift, you are taken to have received the market value of the property at the time of the CGT event. You may also be taken to have received the market value if you and the new owner have not dealt with each other at arm's length in connection with the event, such as where property is transferred between family members. For example, Dan has $120,000 left owing on the mortgage of a rental property he owns. He decides to sell his rental property to his son and daughter-in-law for the balance owing on the mortgage. Dan obtains a market valuation from a professional valuer. It shows the value of the property at the time of the transfer was $250,000. Despite Dan selling the property for less than market value to a family member, the $250,000 market value is his capital proceeds when calculating his capital gain or capital loss. And remember to always consult a tax accountant or tax professional before making any tax-related decisions. And that is a real estate report for Monday, the 13th of September. Thanks for joining us. I'm Emma Pearson for the Finance News Network.